Hi, I'm Bill Ritchie, and I'm going to give you a little guided tour of my concept for the Northwest Print Center Incubators. But before I start, you need to know that it all goes back to the etching press that I invented, that I designed, that you can see behind me there. It's called a Halfwood press, and I'll talk more about that later. Now, this box contains 20 acrylic beads. They're to cover the 19 components plus the administration part up here. So this is a sampler, and they've been arranged alphabetically. And as I go through this, I can describe what each of these 19 startups does, with their scope of work or their basic business idea. When you begin the auditorium alphabetically, probably not the most important part of the Northwest Print Center Incubators, but I think a center does need an auditorium. So we'll leave that kind of open for later on. Next we have the factory school. This is a kind of combination of a trade school and a factory. They actually make the etching presses, the Halfwood line, and another kind of press called the wee woody Rembrandt press. There's a whole line of different types of presses and accessories such as chests, toys, all kinds of things that are made in this factory school of printmaking. Going on, the Print Hall of Fame. Again, it's not ordered in importance or magnitude or worth in terms of business. The Print Hall of Fame is actually more like a museum of Northwest print history, let's say from 1900 to the present. Intaglio Alive. Now there are 4 printmaking processes basically, and intaglio is one of them. This covers etching and engraving, and the word alive attached to it refers to the fact that these are mainly live demonstrations, artists in action. So you'll hear another reference to alive with the other 3 printing processes. Interval is a host or temporary suites for visiting teachers, lecturers, artists, performers, and so forth, who are in one way or another connected to the other incubators in the Northwest Print Center Incubators. Media Village is also a living space, a housing type of concept, and the housing I'm referring to is apartments or temporary quarters, but it's again connected somehow to the media arts, beginning with printmaking and moving up through the newer technologies such as 3D printing and laser engraving, those kinds of things. So the Media Village is really the name for an apartment complex for both temporary and also live-work type of spaces. MOOC stands for a printmaking course online. That is, there is no printmaking course online, such as as you've heard recently about MOOCs, massive openly online courses, MOOC. There isn't one for printmaking, and I believe I have the concept that could be developed and patented for an income earning or cash flow generating course online, again drawing from the expertise that has convened here in the Northwest Print Center Incubators. The OP Zine stands for Online Printmaking Zine. There is only one online printmaking zine in America, made in America. There are 2 coming from Europe, and I think there is one in China, but I'm not too sure. And the one in America just started up about 3 years ago when I first thought of the idea of a printmaking magazine online. And as you might guess, most of the advertising and features and editorial in my proposal come from activities that are going on right in the Northwest Print Center Incubators. Planographic Alive. Planographic is not a common term. Usually you just hear about lithographs, but it's alive. Again, it's another live action, artist in action type of attraction for people to see. prints electronic. This is a reference to the fact that much of printing today is actually done by digital and electronic means, and this startup exploits those factors in connection and collaboration with the allied startups in the Northwest Print Center Incubators. The Printmaking Faire is both an on-site event or a local event such as in Seattle only, or it can be expanded to a traveling kind of circus concept to travel throughout at least the state of Washington, providing entertainment and education opportunities for people in rural areas. Printertainment has to do with games that can teach, learning games or serious games, using virtual worlds, collectible card games, and any kind of learning games, serious games, games with purpose that again relate to the other elements of the Northwest Print Center Incubators. The Printmaker Store is an art supply store, but its only focus is on printmaking. So while we have one or two major art supply stores, one's a big box store on Capitol Hill, and there's a smaller one on South First, actually started up by a Seattle artist named Daniel Smith. The Printmaking Store would be in the facility and again connected to the other startups. For example, the presses that are made in the factory would be part of the retail goods that are offered in the store. It would also include DVDs, kits, and books, and probably space for an art gallery too. PA stands for Prints Arcade, and Prints Arcade is a quick kind of like a museum, an overview where a visitor can walk through and see the whole history of printmaking from the cave days, the days of cave painters and cave stampers. That's why our symbol here for the administration is a handprint, because that's the beginning of printmaking. And through the ages, the Prints Arcade sort of steps you through the history of printmaking that way. That's PA. Relief Printing Alive is again one of those living action live artist attractions focusing on relief prints. Those are woodcuts and linoleum cuts, those kinds of relief printing processes. Sip and Print is more of an experience type of business where people come in and have a sip of wine, they pay a fee and they get a glass of wine and a printing plate and a station at one of the small presses, and they can chat and have fun and make probably 4 or 5 printed etchings, and that's called Sip and Print. It's based on the model of Sip and Paint, which happened to be one of the fastest growing franchises when it was first started about a decade ago. Stencil Alive is another one of those artists in action or live action attractions. This one focused on all the stencil processes, the most famous of which, of course, is screen printing, already a going concern at the Seattle Center's Vera project. This idea of Techno Print actually dates back to the 1980s when I was a professor at the University of Washington, and I and my students determined that printmaking is the source or the root of all new technologies. So it makes sense to expand the definition of printmaking to include new technologies such as laser printing, 3D printing, CNC routing, those kinds of things. Also, these connect to the other startups and the Northwest Print Center Incubators. And finally, the Young Printmakers. Young Printmakers is for kids. It's it could be a daycare type of situation, or it could be a traveling situation where artists go out and work with kids in schools, any number of things, but all the processes are safe, kid safe, and are using, again, the small press. So that's the idea. And in terms of a tour, because one of the focuses is entertainment based on this, there's a high interest on my part of trying to use games and learning experiences to learn about printmaking. So I'm making this this kind of candy box, so as to say, if you had, for example, a seminar in developing businesses, these are all incubators, these are all small business startups, and you introduce the idea of Planographic Alive, for example. The challenge would be to find out what is that market, what is its scope of work, what's it worth, what is its cash value, let's say, if you should try to convince an investor to give it seed money to get started. Well, I think that's probably enough for now. Thanks for watching. I'm Bill Ritchie.